My eldest son, Chris, barged into my house with his wife, Amanda. The first thing out of his mouth was something shocking.
We're not going to take care of you in the future, so we're cutting ties.
And don't bother seeing the grandkid either. It's a nuisance.
As the two of them brazenly announced this, David, who was also there, was about to grab Chris in anger. But it was me who stopped him. When I heard they wanted to cut ties, I thought it was the perfect opportunity. Are you sure? Gladly. Chris and Amanda were taken aback. But then they seemed to decide I'd lost my mind, burst into laughter, and left. But I knew. It wouldn't be long before the two of them showed up at my door again. And sure enough, 6 months after that incident, my prediction came true. My name is Rachel, and I'm 65 years old. My husband, Tom, passed away at the age of 56, and I've been living on my own ever since. Until last year, I interacted with many people at the company I worked for. However, after leaving my job at 65, those opportunities have significantly decreased. At first, I was thrilled to enjoy some leisurely time during what used to be my work hours. But that didn't last, and I found myself wondering what to do. That's when a neighbor suggested I register with a senior employment center. After registering, I started taking contract jobs as an independent contractor and was dispatched to various workplaces. I now work 4 days a week from 9 a.m. to noon, cleaning the office of a small local business. I've been having a great time working alongside my colleagues every day. However, cleaning work is physically demanding. Even though the shifts are short, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't tiring. One day, while riding my bike to work despite feeling exhausted, I threw out my back. Ouch! I somehow managed to make it to my workplace, but the pain was so intense that I had to leave early. One of the employees at the company kindly offered to drive me home. While bedridden, I contacted a nearby chiropractor who advised me to first visit an orthopedic clinic a bit farther from home before coming to them. I guess I have no choice. I slowly sat up despite my pain and sent an email to my eldest son, Chris, and my younger son, David. I left my bike at the office, and I also need to update the Senior Employment Center about my situation. It'd be great if I could get to the clinic today. Both of them live in the neighboring town. There was a reason I decided to reach out to both of them. This was something I had been struggling with for a long time, and I saw it as my last chance to resolve it. I had been waiting for the right moment, and today seemed like the perfect time to make my move. I figured David and his wife, Emma, would be the first to respond. David and Emma visit me regularly and always show concern for my well-being. They even drive me to the store when I need groceries. Sometimes on their days off, I take them to a favorite restaurant that I used to visit often with Tom, as a way to express my gratitude. Even there, they always try to pay for the meal. Of course, I insist on treating them, but every time, they both look so apologetic. Still, the fact that this is the only way I can repay them for all their kindness makes me feel even more guilty. In contrast, Chris and his wife, Amanda, rarely visit unless they need something from me. Chris was originally the type to go along with others. Now that he's married, he completely conforms to Amanda's opinions. So, I had a good idea of who would respond first. Surprisingly, the first call came from Amanda. She must have heard about the situation from Chris and decided to contact me herself. Hello?
Hi, I just heard from Chris. You threw out your back and can't get to the clinic, right?
Yes, it's a bit of a tough situation. I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to reach out. Although Amanda had always been critical of me, I couldn't help but feel a tiny bit of hope from her tone this time. But, as expected, she was her usual self.
There's no way we can drive you. We're busy with the kid and everything else. This is such an inconvenience, so please stop involving us in these things.
I wasn't surprised, so I didn't take it personally. However, Amanda kept ranting on the phone, clearly annoyed that I had contacted her.
Before relying on others, why don't you figure out how to handle these things yourself?
I really didn't have any other choice this time. I seem to have upset you. Amanda only grew more passionate, continuing to lecture me. Since I was the one causing the inconvenience, I couldn't bring myself to argue back too strongly.
Of course. This is such a huge inconvenience. Why don't you just take a cab to the clinic?
I thought about that, but I figured I'd let Chris know first.
Well, Chris told me, and now I'm the one dealing with this. I'm out right now, so it's impossible. You need to figure this out on your own.
Oh, you're out. I'm sorry to bother you. Amanda is a stay-at-home mom, and I've heard that she often has lunch with her mom friends on weekdays. At a family gathering in the past, Amanda even bragged to Emma about how she regularly goes out to lunch and shares parenting tips. Today is probably one of those days. It was hard to tell if Amanda found my call annoying or if she was intentionally letting her mom friends overhear it, but she sounded more assertive than usual.
I'm not your servant, Rachel. And you've got Tom's inheritance, so your life should be comfortable enough, right?
The mention of Tom from Amanda left me feeling unsettled. I could even hear laughter from her mom friends in the background. At that point, I had reached my limit. I'm sorry, but if you're busy, that's fine. Honestly, you've never helped me with anything before, so I wasn't expecting much.
What's that supposed to mean? Are you being sarcastic?
Well, if that's how it came across, I guess I can't help it. I'm sorry if I upset you. You must be busy, so I'll let you go now. I wanted to end the call quickly, but Amanda wasn't finished.
Oh, I get it. You're upset because I brought up Tom. But seriously, Rachel, you're already getting Social Security, and now you're being so bold to ask for help? Are you that strapped for cash? By the way, how much are you getting from Social Security?
I found her questions exhausting, so I answered quickly. About $500 a month. Why does it matter? As soon as I mentioned the amount, Amanda burst out laughing on the phone.
$500? No wonder you're struggling. That's half of my monthly allowance.
Wait, are you saying Chris gives you $1,000 a month? I couldn't help but focus more on Amanda's allowance than my own finances. Chris works for a major corporation, but he's still just an office worker. $1,000 a month as an allowance seemed excessive to me.
Well, good luck getting by on your $500.
Amanda sounded a bit flustered when suddenly my doorbell rang. On the monitor, I saw Emma standing outside.
Rachel, are you okay?
Oh, looks like someone's there. I'll leave you to it then.
Amanda abruptly ended the call. I slowly got up and answered the intercom, asking Emma to let herself in with her spare key.
Sorry about that. I tried calling, but you were on another call, so I just came over since I was nearby. David called me while I was at work. How's your back doing?
I'm really sorry to ask, but if possible, could you take me to the clinic? By the way, what about your job?
I took the day off. David's on his way here now, so we can pick up your bike later.
Emma spoke with a warm smile. It's comforting to have someone to rely on in times like these. She lent me her shoulder and helped me into her car. She drove me to the orthopedic clinic, and after my appointment, David joined us. David went to my workplace, picked up my bike, and brought it back for me. I'll need to continue visiting the clinic for a while, but once my back improves, I'll manage on my own. I told them I wouldn't need rides anymore since both David and Emma work full-time, and I didn't want to inconvenience them further. Even so, the two of them have continued to visit me regularly and drive me to the clinic. Apparently, Emma even told her parents about my situation, and through her, they sent me some homemade dishes. I feel so grateful for their support and am determined to do something for them in return. After about a month of treatment, my symptoms improved, and I returned to work with reduced shifts. Today is my day off, and David and Emma are here at my house, relaxing and having coffee with me. That's because I was the one who invited them over. A neighbor had given me a tart as a souvenir from their trip, so I asked if they'd like to come by when they had some free time. They came over the day after I reached out. They were happy to see that I was recovering, and naturally, the conversation turned to Chris and Amanda.
Chris and Amanda are so selfish. They haven't checked in even once.
Well, let's not be too harsh. After all, it was my back that gave out.
You're too kind, Rachel. But Amanda is as self-centered as ever. She only thinks about what's convenient for them.
Before Chris got married, he used to visit home regularly, just like David. In fact, Chris was probably even more considerate than David back then. But after getting married, he became completely submissive to Amanda, and as a result, he's become almost estranged from the family. The breaking point came back when Tom was still alive. Amanda announced she was pregnant and then decided they needed to buy a house. That wasn't a problem in itself. However, Amanda suddenly called to tell us about it and said,
Well then, we'll be coming over tomorrow, so please be ready.
She ended the call abruptly. The next day, Chris and Amanda did indeed show up.
We're planning to buy a high-rise condo near the station in the neighboring town. So we'd like help with the down payment. About $50,000 should do.
Tom and I were stunned. Amanda, however, looked completely unfazed.
What? The down payment.
I told you yesterday we're buying a condo.
Well, but you didn't mention anything about a down payment.
So you're not going to help us?
Amanda tried to corner Tom. Tom was a quiet and mild-mannered person, not one to argue. It was clear Amanda had contacted Tom instead of me, hoping to manipulate him into agreeing. Meanwhile, Chris stood silently beside Amanda, nodding in agreement. "Wait, I'm sorry, but we can't give you that money."
That's not fair. We want our child to grow up in the best environment. Do you want your grandchild to struggle?
"We've already helped you with living expenses and rent before, haven't we? We can't give you any more money." In short, I was trying to tell them that we wouldn't be providing any more financial support. But Amanda, assuming we were out of money, said something outrageous.
Then Tom should just retire. With his retirement package, you could easily give us $50,000, right?
Tom, who rarely got angry, slammed the table hard. Amanda and Chris flinched. It was probably the fact that Amanda, laughing shamelessly, had not only made selfish demands, but also had the audacity to suggest quitting his job, that made it impossible for Tom to hold back his anger any longer.
Get out. We will never support you again.
But Amanda will be upset.
Don't make me angrier.
We're sorry for bothering you.
Amanda, realizing she had gone too far, quickly made her exit. In the end, Chris and Amanda gave up on buying the high-rise condo. However, it seems they hadn't given up on living in a high-rise condo near the station, as I heard they ended up purchasing a nearby property with some sort of complications. I don't know what made the property complicated, but if they're satisfied, that's all that matters. Later, Amanda bragged to me about how they managed to buy it for 1/6 of their original budget and that they were now living in a high-rise condo. At that moment, I realized Amanda was the type of person who never reflects on her actions, no matter what anyone says. David and Emma knew about that story as well. That's precisely why they were so exasperated. Including everything that had happened in the past, this phone call made my decision clear. A week later, I invited David, Emma, and their 2 kids out for a meal. My recovery was thanks to their regular visits and support. When they arrived at my house and we were about to leave, Chris and Amanda showed up unannounced.
Are you heading out? We came by because we have something important to discuss.
David, Emma, and I were silent for a moment. However, the grandkids ended up telling them that we were going out for dinner.
Oh, I see. Then we'll join you.
Then she shamelessly went ahead and said it. "Wait, what about your kid?"
My parents are watching them. Why does it matter?
"You could have brought them along."
You've got to be kidding. We came to discuss something important. If you had told us your plans ahead of time, we could have brought them.
Frustrated with Amanda's attitude, Emma seemed unable to hold back any longer and approached her, trying to explain the reason.
Actually, tonight's dinner is.
What? Are you saying we're not allowed to join? It's unfair to take Emma and David but exclude us. That would be so mean to Amanda.
Emma, it's fine. I don't want anyone feeling left out. Let's all go.
As expected of you, Rachel. Oh, I'm starving.
Since the grandkids were present, I didn't want to make a scene. Reluctantly, we all headed to a nearby Italian restaurant together. At the restaurant, Chris and Amanda showed no consideration and ordered the most expensive dishes. Watching them silently eat their meals, I couldn't help but feel exasperated. When they finished eating, Emma took the kids outside. She was probably being considerate since the two of them mentioned they had something important to discuss. So, what's this important matter?
Well, there is something. But is David staying to listen?
Yeah, I might as well. I'm sure it's not going to be anything good.
Chris didn't like David's dismissive attitude and glared at him. However, considering that Chris and Amanda had invited themselves along, it was Chris being annoyed at David that felt out of place. David's right. You came unannounced and said you had something important to discuss. And frankly, the things we hear from you two are rarely ever good.
That's awful. How can you say such a thing?
Even I think it's awful, and I'm sitting here listening.
David, calm down a bit. Now, go ahead and tell us what this is about. David was barely managing to hold back his anger. Then, Chris and Amanda exchanged glances and started smirking. Then, what they said next was utterly shocking.
We're sorry, Rachel, but we've decided to cut ties with you.
What? Chris continued.
Amanda told me you're only getting $500 a month in Social Security, right?
And what of it?
Well, sorry, but we can't handle taking care of you in the future. So, we're cutting ties. We don't want to be treated like servants just because you're broke.
Chris laughed and pointed at me, declaring their decision to sever ties. Amanda, sitting beside him, was doubled over with laughter. David and I stared coldly at the two of them. I see.
It's sad, but this is for the best. Oh, and don't bother seeing our kid either. Cutting ties means cutting all connections.
David looked like he was about to grab Chris, but I stopped him. While this situation was unexpected, my mind was already made up. I couldn't help but let a small smile escape my lips.
Why are you laughing?
Well, cutting ties? Are you sure? Gladly.
What?
Chris and Amanda looked at me like I'd lost my mind as I spoke with a smile.
David, you should take Rachel to the hospital. She's clearly not okay.
Oh, we're already cutting ties, right?
David let out a heavy sigh. He had likely realized that it was completely hopeless.
Seriously, You two are unbelievable. Mom hasn't lost her mind at all.
What are you talking about? She's laughing while we're discussing cutting ties.
Listen, don't come crying to us later when you regret this.
David seemed to have a good idea of what I was thinking and looked thoroughly exasperated. Amanda, unhappy with his comment, began ranting at him.
Are you stupid? Why would we regret it? There's no way we could live while supporting a poor old woman getting just $500 a month. Cutting ties is definitely the smarter choice.
Amanda's right. There's no way you can live properly on $500 a month. We're not dealing with any more of this burden.
Hearing this, David was visibly furious.
Who do you think you are? You've never once helped out around the house. Especially after you got married, Chris, you completely changed.
Say whatever you want. Mom already agreed to cut ties, so it's all settled.
David, Chris is right. They've agreed to this, and I'm not expecting anything more. David looked at me with concern. Amanda, still laughing, added,
Well, good luck, David. It seems like Rachel's losing it little by little.
David slammed his hand on the table. Chris and Amanda flinched.
Don't you dare think about coming back here again. I'm a witness to this. If you're cutting ties, then leave now.
It was clear David didn't want to see them anymore. Amanda and Chris left without saying thank you. Once they were out of sight, David sighed deeply.
Are you really okay with this?
Yes, I feel relieved, but those two will definitely come back someday. We need to be ready for when that happens.
Well, I figured it would come to this eventually. Emma and I support your decision, Mom.
Thank you. I was surprised they were the ones to bring it up, though.
Yeah, same here.
And with that, the situation we had been bracing for finally began to unfold. 6 months after Chris and Amanda declared they were cutting ties, they showed up at my house looking furious. They kept ringing the doorbell repeatedly. Yes, who is it?
It's me, Amanda.
Oh, we don't have anyone by that name here.
Just open the door. If you don't, I'll keep ringing the bell.
Amanda, stomping her feet in frustration, looked pathetic on the camera. Watching her with a mix of pity and embarrassment was Chris.
Mom, open the door. We need to talk. Amanda's clearly upset. Don't you feel sorry for her?
I only have one son, and who might you be?
Stop being so childish. Quit being stubborn and just listen to us.
Chris started shouting through the intercom as well. Just as I was thinking this was getting nowhere, David, who was at home, stepped in to handle the situation.
Don't make a spectacle of yourselves out there. You're just giving the neighbors something to gossip about.
David? What are you doing here? It's the middle of a weekday. Don't you have work?
Chris seemed quite surprised to see David there. Or rather, he probably found David's presence inconvenient. It was obvious that they had come to push a conversation that suited their own agenda.
I'm on leave. You didn't seriously take time off work just to show up here for this nonsense. Did you?
Nonsense? Don't be ridiculous. I only came because Amanda insisted I come with her. And don't talk to your older brother like that.
I don't consider someone who causes this kind of embarrassment to be my brother.
What?
David glared at Chris through the intercom camera. Before the situation could escalate into a shouting match, Emma stepped in to calm things down.
If they keep causing a scene, it'll just bother the neighbors more. Why don't you hear them out? What do you think, Rachel?
Well, I have a pretty good idea of what this is about. But let's let them in.
Mom.
David looked at me, clearly angry. He clearly felt that there was no reason to let Chris and Amanda into the house after their declaration to sever ties. But I tried to convince him. David, I understand how you feel, but I'm sure this will be the last time. You know that, don't you? Emma suggested this because she believes it's the right thing to do.
David, just let it go.
Fine.
Reluctantly, David agreed, and we let the agitated Chris and Amanda into the house. When I invited Amanda into the living room, she boldly sat on the sofa and immediately blurted out something outrageous.
Rachel, you bought David's house, didn't you? You didn't even help us with a down payment. This is unbelievable.
Apparently, Amanda had heard through her mom friends that David and Emma had purchased a house. Although their kids live in a different town, they attend the same extracurricular activities as Amanda's child, which is how they share mutual acquaintances. This is likely why Amanda has been so hostile toward David and Emma. David and Emma's two children are charming and very popular among other parents. On top of that, they are excellent students with outstanding grades at their tutoring center. In contrast, Chris and Amanda's only child is hardworking but struggles to improve academically. This has led to Amanda being compared to David and Emma by her mom friends, which seems to put her in a very bad mood. Even during family gatherings, Amanda would intentionally raise her voice so her child could hear and say things like this.
Everyone's so cold to my child. Shouldn't families step up and defend them if others are talking behind their back?
If you're unhappy, maybe you should just leave. Your child looks uncomfortable. I thought it was completely unacceptable for her to take it out on the child, so I firmly called her out on it. After that, Amanda stopped bad-mouthing others at home. I later learned that the kids had apologized to each other because they had a good relationship despite their mother's behavior. It saddened me that Amanda couldn't see the good qualities in her own polite and well-mannered child. And now today, Amanda was here to complain that I had supposedly helped David and Emma buy a house. This was no surprise to me.
Rachel, I know you helped them, so you should help us too. How much did you give them?
Amanda demanded money from me, holding out her hand. Her audacity was so shocking that I wasn't even angry. I was just baffled. Let me make this clear. It wasn't help. Why would I need to help you?
A mom friend told me she saw you at the hardware store with David and Emma, picking out furniture. She even saw you paying at the register.
Well, your friend sounds just as rude as you are. How intrusive.
Excuse me. It's far more rude for you to favor one sibling over the other. We've been treated like nothing but an afterthought.
David and Emma exchanged bewildered glances. They were stunned by how relentlessly self-centered Amanda's comments were. I decided it was time to put an end to this nonsense. Of course, I helped. We're going to be living together.
Living together?
Yes, we're living together, so I contributed to the cost of their new home. Since it's going to be my house too, there's nothing wrong with me paying for it. Amanda didn't seem convinced by what I said. At that moment, David and Emma stepped in.
Honestly, I still feel like we should have paid a little more ourselves. I'm not entirely satisfied.
We're grateful, but having you cover the full amount feels like too much.
You two have done so much for me, and since I'll continue to rely on you, it's only fair. Hearing this, Amanda was stunned.
Wait, what do you mean? The full amount?
We bought it outright. About $500,000.
$500,000?
Hearing the amount from David, Amanda's jaw dropped.
How? On a fixed income from Social Security? That's impossible. Don't tell me you used Tom's inheritance.
Of course not. It was all my own money.
That's a lie. There's no way.
Amanda, thinking that someone like me living on $500 a month from Social Security couldn't possibly afford $500,000, looked at Chris for agreement. However, Chris turned pale as if he had suddenly remembered something. Seizing the moment, I pressed him. Chris, did you ever tell Amanda about my work?
Well, no.
Chris, what's going on? There's no way Rachel could have that kind of money, right?
Chris hesitated but slowly began explaining my work history to Amanda. As she listened, Amanda's face turned ashen.
Why didn't you tell me this earlier?
She raised her voice, demanding an explanation. In reality, the job I retired from was as a freelance sales representative. After graduating college, I worked at a major trading company, excelling in sales and achieving top results. That's where I met Tom, and after dating, we eventually got married. I chose to leave the company to focus on raising my children, but my former boss, who had supported me since I joined, asked if I could return to work, even for a short period. As a result, I continued working from home as an independent contractor. In that role, I achieved notable success, which led to a flood of lecture requests from various fields, allowing me to maintain an annual income in the 7 figures before leaving the job. I had saved a significant amount of money and decided to leave my job to enjoy a quiet life at home. Chris and David were fully aware of my work situation and income at that time. The only one completely unaware of this was Amanda.
That explains everything. I can't believe I'm only understanding this now.
Then what does the $500 a month mean?
It means I only spend $500 a month. The rest goes into savings.
What?
Amanda still seemed unable to process the situation. Chris had his face buried in his hands.
Mom's always been frugal. She only spends a fixed amount each month. If she ever went over, Dad or we would end up covering it and getting scolded for it.
Frugal. But what does that have to do with the Social Security thing?
I didn't tell you the whole story on purpose. Why would I disclose my finances to someone I can't trust? It was easier to just mention the amount I spend from Social Security. David sighed in exasperation, clearly fed up. Amanda sat there with her mouth agape, completely dumbfounded. Why should I share financial details with someone I can't trust?
That's why I told you you'd regret this. Cutting ties without understanding anything. It's ridiculous. Chris, you should have known better.
Amanda said it had to be true, so I believed her.
It was something he should have been able to figure out if he'd thought about it calmly. Chris had forgotten what kind of person I am, and as a result, he made a grave mistake. After fully understanding the situation, Amanda looked me in the eye and smiled.
Rachel, you're incredible. You should have told me this earlier. In that case, the house you bought should be for us to live in, right?
Everyone, including Chris, was stunned by what Amanda said. What?
That would solve everything. Honestly, Rachel, it makes way more sense for you to stay in this house. And David and Emma both work full-time, so they can afford their own house, right? They even said earlier that they wanted to contribute.
It was hard to believe such a statement was coming from someone who had declared they were cutting ties just 6 months ago. Everyone was stunned. Even Chris looked visibly taken aback.
That's not going to happen. Besides, we already agreed to cut ties.
That was just talk. We can take it back. So, when's the move-in date?
Hold on, that's not something we can just take back.
What?
I slammed a prepared document onto the table in front of Chris and Amanda. Both of them picked it up, and their faces turned pale. It was a loan agreement detailing all the financial support I had provided to them over the years. Don't tell me you forgot. When I provided that support, you promised Tom that you wouldn't take the money for granted. He insisted that we document everything properly before offering any help.
Wait, was it really that much money?
There must be some mistake, right?
Amanda, who had been boasting so confidently, was now trembling and speaking in a small voice. And no wonder, the amount easily exceeded 6 figures. Do you not even know how much support you've received? And do you know where that money came from?
Well, it must have come from Tom's money.
All of it was my money. Tom lost everything to gambling. The reason I became so strict about finances was because of Tom's mistakes. Shortly after we got married, I discovered that Tom had debts. Even after paying off all the debts and promising never to gamble again, Tom secretly started gambling once more, which is why we kept our finances separate. That's why Tom was so angry when Amanda suggested he retire. It wasn't just because she was trying to dictate his decisions, but also because he had a reason he simply couldn't quit, even if he wanted to. Tom's company allowed him to borrow money from the company through a system of repayment from his salary. And Tom had borrowed money to the maximum limit for his gambling. But even that wasn't enough, and he ended up taking on personal debts. The existence of these debts only came to light after Tom passed away. When I discovered them, I had to scramble to use Tom's retirement payout to settle the debts. While I managed to pay everything off, there was barely anything left afterward. So, there isn't a penny of inheritance from Tom. Sorry to disappoint you.
That can't be.
Amanda was crushed by despair. I decided to press further. You've been getting $1,000 a month as an allowance, so shouldn't you have plenty of room in your budget?
That's not true.
$1,000 allowance? What's this about?
Chris looked confused, as if he was hearing this for the first time. Amanda's eyes darted nervously.
No, Rachel must be misunderstanding something. I don't get that kind of allowance. You know that, don't you?
Didn't you just brag about spending $50 on lunch with your mom friends the other day?
When Emma pushed back, Amanda became even more flustered. Chris, as if something had dawned on him, shot Amanda a cold glare.
Wait, could it be the tutoring fees?
Amanda froze, unable to respond.
Every month, I give you $300, right? And the other $700 or so. That's for those extra options you mentioned for tutoring, isn't it?
Well, yes, but it's not an allowance.
What exactly are these extra options for tutoring?
Don't poke your nose where it doesn't belong.
Flustered by Emma's question, Amanda raised her voice. Chris, startled, turned to Emma and began speaking.
Emma, your kids go to the same tutoring center. Do you know anything about these optional plans that cost $700 a month?
No, there's nothing like that. The tuition is $100 per child per month, and there's an annual materials fee of $300. That's it. There aren't any other recurring costs. Are they doing other extracurricular activities?
No, they're not.
Amanda looked down, avoiding everyone's gaze. Chris glared at her.
I trusted you. But this has been going on for 10 years, hasn't it?
Well, I just wanted to spend it on education.
Chris, since you're starting to wake up, let me point something out. Compare your appearance to Amanda's. Amanda was dressed head to toe in high-end designer brands. In contrast, Chris wore simple, no-name clothing. Even his bag was an old one I recognized from years ago. It was clear at a glance that Chris hadn't been spending much on himself. Chris has always been the type to lose sight of everything when he becomes devoted to someone. I had seen Chris make mistakes and shed tears countless times. That's why both David and I were worried about him from the very beginning of his marriage. It seemed Chris had finally come to his senses, as he apologized on the spot.
I'm truly sorry for everything up until now. I'll go over the money we owe and discuss it with my family.
Wait, Chris!
We're leaving.
Amanda, unable to argue, followed Chris out the door. If Chris hadn't come to his senses, I was prepared to cut ties with him for good. However, seeing him finally wake up, it turned out to be a reassuring outcome as a parent. After returning home, Chris sold all of Amanda's luxury brand items. It turned out that Amanda had been lying, claiming the money was for their child's tuition, and using the allowance Chris gave her as personal spending money. Even after selling everything, the money barely covered a tenth of what they owed. Chris came to the house to personally deliver the money and promised to pay the rest in full. Since Amanda wasn't with him, I asked where she was.
She went back to her parents' house. When I told her parents the truth, they were furious. Divorce was brought up, but they begged me to stay married until the child is grown.
I see.
And her parents covered the entire debt for now. Amanda is supposed to pay them back while working. They said they'd send the payments to your account, so please give me the details later.
Understood. Chris apologized again.
Mom, David, and Emma, I'm deeply sorry for everything up until now. I know apologizing won't make up for what I've done, but for the sake of my child, I'm begging you, please revoke the decision to cut ties with me. I know it's selfish to ask, but I'm pleading with you.
David was relieved.
If you've truly woken up, then fine. Honestly, it was all just a matter of apologizing.
Just say you're happy about it. Rachel, you're okay with this, right?
Yes, of course. With that, smiles returned to our home, and peace was restored. Now I'm at Tom's grave, sharing everything that has happened. I came to report to Tom about the move and about Chris, whom he had worried about until the very end. I've moved in with David and his family. I was planning to sell the old house, but I decided to pass it on to Chris instead. Both Chris and my grandchild are very happy about it. Chris has since moved in and is enjoying life with his family. The old house is in the same school district, so the grandchildren now attend the same elementary school. They've grown even closer and often visit each other's homes to play together. I also received a report from Amanda's parents. Amanda is diligently working to pay back the debt. Her parents initially thought she was genuinely remorseful. However, after visiting their grandchild, Amanda didn't ask anything about her child. Instead, she kept asking if Chris still cared about her. When they questioned why she didn't show concern for her child, Amanda seemed indifferent. To make matters worse, she even said that when she and Chris reconcile, she plans to leave the child with her parents. Naturally, her parents scolded her and declared that once the debt is repaid, they would disown her and kick her out of their home. Though Amanda is now pretending to care about her child, it's too late. However, it's clear that Amanda still has lingering feelings for Chris, so her parents have decided to monitor her closely to ensure no harm comes to him. As for the grandchild, he apparently don't care about not seeing Amanda. In fact, he even said he doesn't want to see her at all. He felt better now that Amanda, who had been embarrassing him, was gone. Smiles have returned, and the grandchild is happily spending every day with Chris. Still, I know that anything could happen. That's why I vowed at Tom's grave to leave behind everything I can for my children and their families while I'm still alive.